Hello and welcome to Erupt, the home for how businesses can scale and transform. Throughout this podcast, we aim to inspire and educate to help you and your business thrive. Across the course of our episodes, we'll be interviewing industry leaders to uncover some of the challenges across the world of work. We aim to give an insight into some of the fastest growing organisations across HR and technology. Please follow us on our journey to erupt and elevate your business. In today's episode, we discuss the topic of showcasing value in the modern environment as a hybrid leader. For this session, our panel included Michael Banks, who is Principal Consultant at PeopleSmart SAS, Sabine Weishaupt, who is Chapter Lead and Future Leadership Design at Deutsche Telekom, Monique Choudhuri, who is the Non-Executive Director at Brentford FC, and Sofia Liasi, who is the Senior L&D Partner and Global Leadership Development at Novartis.
Well, welcome everyone, and good to see my panelists there. I was thinking beforehand that this is a bit like introducing what do they call it, a super group. Remember the days when you had super groups, when it was like different musicians from different bands, and they'd all come together and they were like the super group. Well, this is our super group. So I'm going to introduce each of the three panelists in 1 second. Again, the title is The Hybrid Leader, Showcasing Value in the Modern Environment. And I was thinking that, hybrid leader, I mean, there's so much talk about hybrid leadership and the hybrid work environment. In fact, it's almost become a norm now. So it's more a question of diving into what can optimize this new environment, which people are calling hybrid, what behaviors, and especially from a leadership perspective, what are the behaviors, the characteristics, the qualities that are required to make this new environment work in the future? Okay, so first of all, we have Sabine Weishaupt, who is the Chapter Lead, Future Leadership Design for Deutsche Telekom. We have Monique Choudhuri, who apart from being an advisor to corporations on diversity and inclusion, is also a non-executive director of Brentford Football Club in the English Premier Division, and her story and the club story is pretty amazing on that one. And Sofia is a senior leadership learning and development partner within global leadership development for Novartis. And I'm sure Sofia won't mind me saying that she is responsible for the leadership journey of the top 200 leaders in Novartis. So welcome all three of you. So I'm going to start with Sabine. I'm not sure you're on the screen at the moment, at least on my screen, full face. So my first question to you is, how can trust be built within the virtual environment, which is a key part of obviously hybrid?
Yeah. Thank you, Michael, for the question. And let me maybe take a little bit of context first. So I would like to follow up on what you said in the introduction. I mean, we are now facing the hybrid working world. It has not been a choice for all companies, but it has been the best possible solution due to the pandemic, the best possible solution to uphold our businesses. And it has been already proven successful in terms of productivity in many, many cases. So what I'm going to say is hybrid is not going to go away. That's going to stay. Yet the details beneath it, like hybrid meetings or the way, coming to the trust topic as well, how we engage from a leadership perspective in that setting, that of course offers far more opportunities now. And the way I do see it, I mean, I had a lot of thoughts around what really changed on the topic of trust. Yeah, now in a hybrid world or in a virtual world, what is really the difference? And I like to think around that. It's not, as you all know, it's not my formula, but I really like to think around those key ingredients of you have a trustful relationship if there is credibility, if there is reliability, if there is intimacy, and then consider also as a denominator your self-interest and the ego to take it off. But what is the difference? I mean, that is also true in present. Yeah, so that has been also always been there before. What is now different in the hybrid? And for me, maybe just a few pointers. So when it comes to the credibility, when you want to build a trustful relationship, and it comes to credibility, do people really believe that you have knowledge about what you talk, that you know what is going on, that you have the ability to have different perspectives and so on. I do believe that now in this hybrid world, especially then, and also if you're just working virtually and you have no on-site opportunities, more than before, you have to make more use of explicitly showing that. And that might be, there are lots of opportunities. Just look at this conference, at this situation right now. Yeah, we have opportunities to share beyond, which goes back into, feeds back into our leadership a relationship in our own teams. Yeah, so this is huge opportunities that we should more consciously take advantage of. When it comes to the reliability in a trustful relationship, it's just the walk to talk. It also has been there for forever. Of course, you need to walk the talk, to role model as a leader, also nothing new. Also here, I think you need to make it more explicit. Meaning, for example, if you offer your back, so if you have people's back and if you stand in between them and a difficult situation and you move into that space, you have to talk far more about it. It's about communication. But that they really, recognize it, and that you make it far more explicit than you maybe had to do in the past when they could see you talking maybe to your own boss. They saw it, in the open office. They can't see it anymore. So you need to make it more explicit. That is at least my takeaway. For the third element, which is the intimacy, so to know people, to meet them on a human-centric level. These technologies offer so many opportunities. It's amazing. You have a virtual meeting like this, and you might have gifts that you put in. You can show emoticons that offers also other people and other groups of that might have been excluded a bit in the past. Gives them a way to express themselves, far more inclusive now. And all of those things, I'm sure everybody has tried it out, to have coffee talks, to put that into the calendars, to allow it, to explicitly ask for, I want you to have coffee talks, and I want you to just talk about your personal, whatsoever is on your mind. I don't want you to talk about, you don't necessarily at least, to talk about, the whatever topic you have from a business perspective. So I think there are some pointers in here which would help. And then there is one more topic that I see we might add in this hybrid world, and that is for me the topic of, I call it fairness, or the topic of equality. So the ability to level the playing field. For example, as I said, hybrid work, from my perspective, is here to stay. There is no discussion about the choice. It's there. So, you can try to do that differently, but it's going to be quite difficult looking at what is currently ongoing. But what, for example, you can influence are the hybrid meetings. How do you set them up? Do you do it at all in a hybrid setup, that you have people in one room and that you have others online? It's a choice. You can do that. So it's a choice you can shape. And I have a lot of discussions about it. So in the past, I always had the rule, one person, one line. Yeah. So we're not choosing to have the hybrid meeting style. Now I have situations where people were telling me, okay, but we have a location A and a location B. So you have two hubs. That might work again. And this ability to sense the power games behind it, the perception of power, I think that is a great an extremely important, actually, not only great, an extremely important contributor to level that playing field. So in case that you want to do a hybrid meeting, for example, why don't you just then think around, okay, I have 2 people on the line, the rest is in the room, or I have 5 people on the line. What can I do to level up, to level the playing field by leveling up those on the line, which are currently maybe, in the minority and in the weaker, perceived to be in the weaker position and to perceived to be excluded in a certain kind of way. Maybe you give them the moderation. Maybe, they have specific rights that the others don't have. So to think around that, I think it's extremely, extremely important. And yeah, I think those are for me, the most important things around trust and keep the ego in check, which is the denominator of the whole formula. Yeah, but that has been true also in present. So I think there is not a big difference whether you are in virtual or.
Thank you, Sabine. Very good. Anyone else? Sofia, Monique, any response to what Sabine is saying?
Not so much a response, and this may come through the questions that you're asking me, but I think it's around really knowing who your people are in this hybrid environment, really understanding the individuals. There's been more talk around introversion and extroversion since we've been in the hybrid world, what people's preferences are, how they perform better, in a screen situation. And, I know a lot of people who said, when we first went into lockdown and we were relentlessly virtual, always virtual. People, when I love it, this is great. This is always the way I've wanted to work. I'm really, really happy. And then 6 months on, 9 months on, that changes because there is definitely the water cooler conversation that you lack when you are in a hybrid environment. So if you know that people have a need to be more social, if you know that people have a need to communicate less, but actually can contribute greatly, but actually don't want to do that as well in a virtual setting, as a leader, you have a responsibility to find a way to bring that person in to a meeting conversation, a hybrid meeting conversation, and get the best out of them. Is that something you have to do before the meeting? Is that something you have to prime them with? Is it getting their views and opinions before the meeting, or say, come and speak to me after the meeting? I just think look to your individuals, know your individuals well, and find their tone and work towards their tone. That empathy that you were talking about, Sabine, I think is really important. That listening, that understanding, how to get the best from people is, to me, it's crucial, because people may look like they're in front of you, but in their head they might be in Barbados on holiday. And how do you absolutely, really get into somebody's psyche, emotions, brain, and get the real best out of them in a virtual scenario? And I think some leaders have done that well. I mean, really well, really exceeded that. And some haven't been quite so good. So they're still driving the agenda and content before the happiness, satisfaction of the individual who's attending a meeting or an online setting.
Fantastic. That's a very good distinction there between the two, and I'm being simplifying it, the two types of leadership. And what strikes me, Monique, when you're talking, is that what this comes down to at the end of the day, the context of any communication to other people in this hybrid environment is, to what degree do you care about your people and the people around you? Because if you genuinely care, you will put the thought into it, the kind of thing you just talked about. You'll put the preparation in. You'll really try to understand people. If you don't care, if you just care about your own results, because you're responsible for those results, it's not going to work so well. So absolutely, great comment. I'd like to talk to you, Sofia, about your views on the characteristics of a hybrid leader. What would you say are the key characteristics of a successful hybrid leader?
And actually, Michael, thanks for the question. I would like to connect it to something that Monique's and Sabine's comment triggered in me, actually. I wonder if in the hybrid situation, something was surfaced that we were not doing sufficiently anyway. I have been debating in my head whether we have been putting, as leaders, sufficient time in knowing our people, truly knowing our people. And maybe we have at times been using the medium or the situation as a way out or as an excuse. So I personally have seen a lot of opportunities coming in this hybrid situation because we had to push ourselves a bit further into actually knowing our people. There was a lot more conscious effort. Yes, we missed the water cooler conversations, but I wonder whether we have put a lot more time because we knew we wouldn't have those in other type of chats and check-ins, whether the real people started surfacing. I mean, you're in my living room as we're speaking, and whoever is here in this lovely panel, I've seen people's dogs, kids, problems. So I keep this thought in my head, and I don't have the answer, but I still keep it. So Michael, back to your question, I think this links actually to the characteristics. I don't think that the characteristics of a leader in a hybrid situation are the characteristics of a hybrid leader. Actually, I think that there are characteristics of something we might have lost and we need to revisit, which is not the heroic leader, not the hero leader, but the human leader. And within that humanity, the characteristics of the leader are about approachability, are about vulnerability. I think we have all been in very vulnerable situations where something was happening in the background and we couldn't control it. And I think being open about that vulnerability, because that vulnerability will invite the vulnerability of the other person who's on the line. And that's the connecting point. So for me, that's the number one, vulnerability. I think the other one is what we have been speaking about here. It's a conscious effort to make the time to acknowledge that we have more needs than the business needs, and attending to those needs will allow us to be more efficient and more present to the business needs as well. So it is, I find that there is, in this hybrid setting, the leader needs to bring full self, needs to bring full person. So I can speak forever about the characteristics within this context. Another thing I consider important is the need for authenticity. So, and acceptance. So whoever you bring, that person is welcome, but then you allow the space to everyone else to coexist in that space.
To also add to what Sofia was saying, I found what she was saying was quite profound, especially the comment about turning to or returning, not so much hybrid, but just remembering and returning to being a human leader.
Yeah, absolutely. So it resonated extremely strongly with me that you said, Sofia, that there might be something that we might have lost or, kind of put away and try to avoid and, just kind of don't look at it. and I believe that everybody of us had human experiences during this pandemic, and it helped us extremely to reflect. And this push to reflect, we see now everywhere. Yeah, and we see it in many ways. We see it, even in the what we, of course, as a company might perceive as being negative if people resign, if they say I need to have a different choice in my life for my job. But at the end of the day, it's positive. It's good that they, thinking that. And to come back to that, to really understand what people need, that resonates very strongly with me. And I also think it goes into the skills that leaders do need on the way forward to help people to connect whatever the company's purpose is with their own purpose. So where do they find themselves? Yeah, so that extremely strong connection, which is the core of the employee experience, actually of the human experience, to enhance that, also to make that consciously, to bring it into formats, etc., to speak in development dialogues with people exactly about that. Not just having it as a nice banner at the beginning or in the lobby of your company, but make it tangible and personal and individual. I think that is a huge opportunity that we now have been given by something else that triggered it from the outside, and we should make the best out of that. And it
Yeah.
also, if I can add one on the well-being, because also Monique, you were very strong on that side with the, to know people and to be aware of the well-being. I can't remember that I ever have seen in the recent years before all of this that we had so many programs around well-being of people. Luckily, at the same time, we have a lot of additional research around the neurosciences, which is emerging more and more, which becomes more and more practical also in terms of how can you put something in. So that's great that we have that, that coincidence of having more knowledge from the academic side, at the same time having the need to apply the knowledge due to a situation that has been given. And that also is something I would say we could have had in the past, which is kind of, we had lost that human side, and to realize that, at the end of the day, it's all about being happy and healthy, and being successful in your business life plays an extremely important role towards being happy and healthy.
Yes, absolutely, Sabine. I mean, it's a bit like if your employees are happy, your customers are going to be happy.
Yeah.
But I think it's to know, Michael, what happiness.
Interesting thing to say. Same principle, though.
Important to know what happiness looks like to individuals, though.
Yeah.
And I think
there's
and I think there's something around, and I think we miss demographic in this. So one of the things that I'm working on as a project right now is age and generational responsiveness in a hybrid environment. So, for instance, a 16 to 25-year-old, their brain is still forming, and they have lost the last 2 years of what is essentially their experiential life. So if you think, you get to me, I'm a 50-year plus leader, I love social. I love to be out and about and around people. And I struggled with it right at the beginning, but I found my way and I found my medium. And now I've settled in that. But I think about my children who are 22 and 25. They lost 2 years of their life. They don't want to sit on a screen forever and ever and ever. You have to capture them. You have to get them really quickly, play to their strength, play to their learning style, their response style, because this whole new neuroscience around epigenetics, around how you code your own DNA, how you code your own experience, they will respond to a virtual environment in a very different way than somebody who's 50 plus like me. I'm resigned to the fact now that my world for the next couple of years is going to be hybrid, but a lot of them are itching to get back to social connection. So they won't perhaps, not everybody, but they won't perhaps be as engaged authentically in the hybrid experience as maybe somebody who's 20 years older. So I think we're not just considering levels of introversion and extroversion, we're considering youth, versus, youth 20 to 30, 30 to 40, 40 to 50. How do we respond to this hybrid environment? And I think the leader has to understand people through a demographic lens, not just a well-being lens. Because actually, at the end of the day, all of it is well-being, because if you don't get this right, it's going to affect people's stress levels, their anxiety levels, their mental health, etc. And I think there's a bit of humility in that. And I think Sabine spoke to this very, very well. And Sofia spoke to the human leader. I think there's humility, which is going, we might not get this right, and we may have to try out a few techniques about how we work with people before we can get it right. Because actually, we may have on a meeting a 21-year-old who's not gone to university, a 21-year-old who has gone to university, a 55-year-old and a 60-year-old in the same breath. How do we make sure that we engage all of those people in that hybrid world? So I think there's a lot more considerations for this hybrid leader now, to be human, to have humility, to go, I don't know all the answers. What do I need to find out? And actually, I think there's a lot of question asking that doesn't go on. How can we connect with you better? What would be the best way of us connecting with you to give you the hybrid experience that gets the best out of you, which is all about inclusivity, as Sabine was saying. So there's a lot of considerations, and I think we're iterating and evolving right now. I don't think we've quite got there, but I think we're in that process, and that fundamentally must be very good.
Mhm.
So I don't know what Sofia and Sabine, think about what I'm saying there.
No, I would, if I may, I would really emphasize also the generational situation, to be aware of that. But I also would go back to the, for example, extroversion, introversion discussion. Also, that is something we have not very much, it's kind of the lost, yeah? We have not really considered in the past. And now suddenly we have opportunities. So for example, later today, just to give a practical example, I'm really looking forward that we're trying something out that one of our providers brought in. And, we're having these virtual meetings. So of course we have breakout rooms to engage people and, as everybody has. But on top of the breakout room, we will now also have a reflection room. So people can decide on whether they want to go into a breakout or whether they rather go into the reflection room where you are quiet, can think for yourself, journal, or whatsoever you do. Let's see how it will go. I don't know. I can tell you tomorrow. Yeah, but to try these kind of things out and to use the technology that we have at hand to really, support this. It makes it so easy. It's very simple. Yeah, I think great opportunities.
That's really interesting. Let us know how it goes. I mean, that's fascinating. And actually, you know what? And by the way, we've got 5 minutes left. I know time flies, and I'm dying to ask you all lots of questions. But I just want to sort of segue now from what you just said, Sabine, to Sofia, because I know that Sofia also, one of the things I was going to ask her is, how have you seen vulnerability play out in your world? And I think, Sabine, when you're talking about an experiment like that, it's up to the leadership to be vulnerable enough to know that, as Monique said, you're trying things out. They might fail, but at least it's okay to have the courage to experiment, to explore, to ask these questions. So if I may, I'd just like to go to Sofia again and ask you, Sofia, how have you seen, from a leadership perspective, vulnerability playing out in your world?
Exactly in the way Sabine and Monique have been describing, actually. I have been very fortunate to see situations where leaders said, I don't know. I don't have the answer. And I think that's exactly an expression of vulnerability. I'm under the impression that in the past, leaders had a lot of burden on their shoulders, feeling they had to hold all the answers. And I've seen leaders actually, by saying that they don't know and being vulnerable and open to the teams, inviting the teams to step in and then go to the collective and a space of co-creation where the team collectively looks for the answers. So if I may also then expand to what Monique was saying, linking exactly this experience of mine, I think the future is about the leaders understanding that it's about co-creation. No one can possibly, this is a complex problem that at times when the pandemic started was in the chaotic space, if we think in terms of Kinefen model. So no one person, or not even 300 people, not even 1,000 people, hold the answer individually. So I think this flexibility, this flex to be vulnerable enough to say, I don't know, and then I invite and co-create is something that will be crucial for the future. I'm optimistic by nature, but I'm optimistic because I have seen this creating opportunities in the environment where I work. I've seen this happening in practice. So I hope that we, from where we sit in leadership development, we will create environments where people will feel safe enough or create the conditions for people to say, I don't know, but I can think with you and you and you to find out.
Great, thank you very much. We have about 3 minutes left, and just want to ask Monique if you could give me a concise answer here. It's to do with the importance of inclusion in a hybrid environment, to make sure we do include the 60-year-olds, the introverts, and all the rest of it. And from your experience, you've had to do that in your community at the football club with amazing success. So just very briefly, given the time factor here, what leadership behaviors do employees and future employees need to see to truly believe in an inclusive culture? Can you just give us a quick summary of that?
Well, paraphrasing my esteemed colleagues here, Sabine and Sofia, I'd say human. I think authentic. I think followers can smell, horse manure at 20 meters. They know if you're not truthful. So I think authenticity. I think admitting that you make mistakes, admitting that you don't have the answers. I think that vulnerability. I'm big on humility. And I think that co-creation is around togetherness and asking for feedback, personal feedback and team feedback on how we are. I also think it's keeping conversation rolling. And I've got this thing about an open door policy, as a leader, which is saying that my door is open, really it's open. And saying, and there's no part of the conversation that is ever off the table. And I think when people trust that, so we've looped back to Sabine here in terms of the trusting leader, but I think when people trust you, they look at that reliability, they look at that credibility, they look at that integrity, they will open up more and they will come with you. And I think integrity is really important right now in the hybrid environment, doing what you say you're going to do, having people's backs. So to bring that all together, I think humility, I think respect, I think trust, authenticity, not knowing all the answers, but reliability. And if you keep your promises, that goes a long way in this environment, because people are sensitive right now and they're looking for ways where people fall short. So they're looking for good leaders to lead the way. So I hope that helps in terms of what I can bring it round full circle.
No, thank you very much. We do have one question in chat. I said at the beginning, we've got time, so let's quickly go to Jason Wolf, who talks about body language and expressions are hard to view in virtual meetings, if at all, depending on if the cameras are on. How can you read the room? Well, I'd like to just quickly suggest that one expression or phrase we haven't mentioned yet is emotional intelligence. As a skill set, if you're good at it, you can read a room. If you're good at it, you can look at people like I'm looking at you now. I'm looking at your faces. And, if, for example, Sabine was miserable, I should be able to pick that up. But thank goodness she's not. So anyway, I think I want to plug that, because I think of all, to wrap up everything that's been said in terms of the practical behaviors required of us all, is to develop our emotional intelligence skills that include becoming more aware of ourselves, of others, of being authentic, of inspiring people, and all the rest of it.
Thank you so much for your wonderful insight and a great discussion. And thank you, Michael, for leading the line.
Well, thank you very much. I'd just like to say, by way of finishing, thank you to my supergroup. You've all been wonderful, and this has been exactly what I was hoping for, a really robust, rich conversation. Thank you.
This podcast was brought to you by Annapurna Erupt. If you enjoyed this episode, please visit our Go Erupt website to get involved in our regular podcasts, video footage, and live events throughout the year. Thank you for listening.